So this is a cool one because we've been asking you all to rate, review, and subscribe. And as you do so, leave a question in the review. And so today what we're going to cover is 2 questions that were left in the reviews of our podcast. So thank you first for rating, reviewing, and subscribing. If you haven't already, please go to the Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, and review. We would love to hear what you have to say. And if you have any questions, because we're going to continue to do this and we want to make it very relevant to you and help you in any way that we can.
So the first question comes at us from Peace Bugga.
Peace Bugga at Jane_Heisung. I apologize if I mispronounced that last name.
He probably did.
So the question is, where to even begin? How do I grow and flow? Great question. Great question. How would you answer that, John? So
as a yoga teacher and yoga entrepreneur, which I'm going to assume that's what she's saying, is like anything, the best way to grow is to cut our teeth. When we finish teacher training, when we finish learning how to teach this stuff, jump in and teach as many people as you possibly can. If that means starting at a studio and teaching classes in a studio, or paying your family and friends. No, I kid a little bit, but not really. We have one of our teachers, when he finished his training, he actually paid his friends to take his class so that he could cut his teeth with it. So our point is, teach as much as you can, because in that process, there's 2 things you're trying to figure out.
Yeah. And that is, who do you want to serve and how do you want to serve them? So this is really interesting. So back in 2005, when we opened up Hot House, well, it's even before that. So we graduated from our first teacher training, the one that certified us to be teachers, in 2003.
Yeah.
Right. And so in 2003, it was a totally different landscape of yoga. There wasn't social media. There wasn't this whole big online presence that you have the capability of serving people in. And so for us back in the day, it was like, you're either going to teach at another person's studio or you're going to open up your own studio. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So that's like, okay, so that's kind of the, how do you want to serve them, right? So what we're saying in the cutting your teeth is, during that process, so you just got to get your feet wet. You got to get in the mode. You got to put in the reps of teaching. And that's why it's important right out of teacher training to go at it immediately. And there's a lot of people who you'll never feel ready. If you're in a position where you've done a teacher training and you haven't taught yet, you're never going to feel ready. And understandably so, because you have a high standard, most likely, of what you want to offer people. And your ego will keep you from acknowledging the effort, the time, the energy, the money that you've put in to acquiring the information you have.
Chris, you remember when we finished training and we threw ourselves into our first class? Did you feel ready?
Oh my God. I felt it was so. I would like to individually call and apologize to everyone who was in my first class.
Oh my God. My first class was a 90-minute class. I taught it for 105 minutes. I went over 15 minutes. I didn't even realize, but I did every single cue that I knew for every single pose. And it was just torturous. Chris was in that class.
I was in that class and it was the worst.
It
wasn't that bad. He was a good teacher. He had
we thought we were better than we were because we had experience in martial arts and teaching classes in martial arts, but it didn't translate that well, guys. It was a different thing. And I wasn't ready.
Yeah, by my third class, I was ready to quit.
Yeah, me too.
After it was my third one, I was like, yeah, I'm not cut out for this. I'm going back to martial arts. And thankfully, I didn't stop.
Right.
But so there's some value in that. Just don't stop. Just continue. But you got to start. That's kind of where do you start? Start teaching. Teach anywhere. Like we said, one of our teachers paid someone to teach them. Paid them to teach them.
Yeah.
But I don't think you need to go do that. We have people who just graduated from our most recent teacher training, and they were going out and teaching at a church. They were going out and teaching at a non-denominational church. They were going out and teaching in the park, and they're doing the work that needs to be done in the beginning. The point is, you got to start. If you don't start, you're never going to get to where you want to go.
And as in that process, as you're teaching people, you start to get a sense of, who is it that I want to serve? Like how do I want to express this gift of yoga to the world? For some people, they get in, they start teaching, they realize, oh, I want to teach kids. I want to make an impact in schools and have this as a huge shift in the school system to help kids. Some people realize, I want to teach the elderly. I want to teach people that are in retirement centers that need that mobility to get their lives back on track. And so the gambit's wide open. Some people are like, I want to teach wounded warriors. I want to teach veterans. I want to but we have to get out there and cut our teeth to get that, to actually acquire the skill set. And then we decide who is it that we want to serve, right? And
a great start point in deciding and figuring out who you want to serve is to start with your own story. We just finished, I think it was, by the time this will air, it'll be a couple weeks ago, Who is Your Who? We did a whole podcast. It was actually a live training that we did in our Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets Facebook group. And it really dives deep into figuring out who is your who, meaning who is it that you want to serve. But where we start is with our own story. Like somewhere along the way, you got fired up to teach yoga, to practice yoga, and in that process to teach yoga. And there's probably some problem, some struggle that you went through. Maybe it wasn't yours, but it was somebody else's. And all of a sudden you got inspired to want to help them. That's what called you to actually do a teacher training and to become a teacher. And so if you didn't go through that consciously, go back and reflect on your own story, reflect on your own experience. Or if you didn't have something that stands out, figure it out. That's why the value of teaching is, one, you're going to get better at this with the skill set that you have, but you're also going to be encountering a lot of people and you're going to be able to talk to them and see what problems they're experiencing and see how you can help them. Once you've got that, then it's, how do you want to serve them? Now, we started with the story of us back in 2003 when we started teaching, and the answer was teach at a studio or open up a studio. Well, we opted for both. We started teaching at a studio and then we opened up our own studio in 2005. Now you're like the opportunities that you have are so much more abundant because you can go online and do an online business. You can create a Facebook group and have people pay you to coach them within the Facebook group. You can become a yoga coach. You can you can own a studio if you want to. You can teach and become an independent contractor at studios and teach at a bunch of them. You can we had a student of ours who was just solely doing retreats to Bali. I was awesome. I was man, how did you figure that out? I want to do that. So the point is so who and then how. That's how you begin, and that's how you continue to grow and flow, is teach a lot, because that's going to cut your teeth and that's going to get you better. And then in that process, figure out who it is that you want to serve and how you want to serve them.
Yeah. The next thing that happens, and this kind of relates to the second question, is that when we get out there and start teaching and we're consistent with our teaching, we tend to fall off our practice. This happens with most teachers, is they start to teach so much that they forget about that self-care. They forget about their own practice and staying committed to their own practice. And this is vital in our ability to be exceptional teachers, not falling off our practice, continuing to practice. But think about this, we all have those days, especially as we start to teach more, where you teach 2 or 3 classes in a day, and the last thing you want to do is get back into the studio and take a class. You get tired. But our ability to teach in all emotional states. And this is why we are extremely adamant about teaching. So our teachers, when we first opened up our studio, all our teachers had to take 5 classes a week. They could, that was the policy in order to teach with us. Now, I'll preface that by saying we didn't have wives or kids at the time, right?
So we were practicing at that time 6 to 7 days a week. For me, it was 6, because at that time and in my early 20s, I would go hard all the time, because the reason I was practicing was different then than the reason I'm practicing now. But what we said was, listen, our standard is 6 to 7. We require of our teachers 5. Why? Because we knew that for them to teach and to stop practicing meant they would be ineffective as teachers and they would stop growing.
Yeah. And Chris needed a party night too.
Yeah, in my early 20s, I probably did.
You probably did. In your 20s, I did too. Gotta have a party day.
Oh my God.
Gotta go down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, man, just trying to find the balance.
But fast forward to years later, where we got married, we had kids. We started realizing that we needed to balance life out, right? In order to practice that many days a week in the studio. Now you can home practice and things like that, and we can talk about that later. But in order to do that, practice that much, other things had to take a side, and we didn't. And that's not like, if we've talked about this before in our value ladders, what's most important in our lives, and health is way up there, and family's right there too. So for all of us, for Chris and I, what we realized is I need to shift this a little bit. Right. And so we ended up dropping it down as we got busier with life and kids and family. We started practicing 4 to 5 days a week. Right. And we require our teachers to at least teach 3 to 4 days a week. So it's shifted a little bit, and it happens as we get older and we evolve and we start to realize, okay, there's other things that are in my life that are extremely important to me. I need to balance my time in different ways.
All right. So we really haven't answered the question of how do you keep the fire lit as you continue to teach more and as you increase the level of responsibilities. So the real answer was kind of embedded in what we were talking about, which is we got to figure out why we're practicing, and then how our practice relates to how we're teaching. And so, and it's an evolution. And so the real answer is, like, the big takeaway is, how do you keep your practice like on fire? How do you keep the fire lit for it? Is always remember your big why. Like, when you started practicing yoga in the beginning, right, there was something that captured you. There was a why that like drove you to practice even when you didn't feel like it, right? And then for us, it was like, I wanted to be the best yogi, meaning I wanted to be able to do press ups into handstands and all the different arm balances. And like, at one point I was like, I want to be able to do like a one-armed handstand. And that meant a lot to me. That was my big why. I wanted to get better physically because I was very performance oriented, coming from the martial arts background. Now, fast forward to what John was talking about. Here I am now. Like, that was my early 20s. I'll be turning 40 this coming March at the time this is being recorded. And I've got a wife. I've got 2 young children. I've got like 2 yoga studios and a whole other business, Yak Yoga Concepts. And my life is busy. And the reason I practice now, my big why, I don't care about the handstands. I don't care about the press ups. I don't care about the physicality as much. I care about the physicality and how it keeps me feeling good in my life. It keeps me showing up for my wife. It keeps me showing up for my children, to be the best father, to be the best husband, to be the best brother, the best employer that I can possibly be. So my big why is, man, it's not for the physical. It's not to do these advanced, like all basically like gymnastics type things, because that's what ends up happening when you advance in the yoga asana, the yoga postures. It's how the yoga practice affects my life. And so when I don't, because the real, what's embedded in that question is, at some point you're like, man, I don't feel like practicing. I taught 2 classes today. I taught 3 classes today. I've taught 10 this week. I've taught 15 this week. Man, I don't feel like getting back on my mat. So how do you get on your mat when you don't feel like getting on your mat? The answer is, remember why you're doing it in the first place. Go back to why you started it in the first place. And that will connect you and give you and like, it creates the environment mentally for you to show up physically.
Yeah. And I know that when I continue to practice day in and day out, through all of the emotional ups and downs, when I'm feeling a little bit off energetically, when I'm feeling tired, when I'm feeling energized, when I have so many other things to do, but I prioritize getting on my mat, I realize that when I have those experiences, those are the exact experiences that my students are having too, so that I can actually talk about those experiences in classes and relate to my students even more so. So it's powerful, not just for us, right, to get our bodies feeling good, to get our minds clear, but it's powerful for us as teachers to be able to relate to our students, because they are doing the same thing. We're telling them to practice consistently. They're coming onto their mats in every kind of different emotional state. And when we can speak to that, we create connection.
Yeah. We have a coach of ours who says, when a teacher stops learning, they lose their right to teach. And that's what John just described, is like, when you lose the connection of what it feels like to be a student, you're not growing and staying, like, you're not leveling up your experience of the practice. So you lose the relatability to people that you're actually teaching. And what's so sad is that, like, the very thing that like sparked the desire for you to teach and give back in this way was your practice. And if you look at your practice like throughout your lifespan, of course it's going to change. I think one of the reasons we lose the fire is because we're trying to practice with a why that's no longer relevant. Like today, if I cared about doing handstands and stuff, I wouldn't fire me up because I don't care about it. Just inside, it kind of hurts to say that because I really used to like identify with being able to do some cool stuff. But now I care about like being patient with my kids.
Because if our whys, and what Chris is describing us is that your why has to create emotion. Emotion drives behavior. If there's not enough emotion around your why, it's not a big enough why because it's not going to drive you. Like the example he just used, there's not enough why for him or myself to get on our mats just to perfect our handstands, just to perfect some part of our physical practice. Yeah. There is a huge why in the ability to keep my body healthy, to feel good, to keep my mind clear, so that I'm better at everything. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better brother. I'm a better son. You know, it helps me become excellent in all areas of my life, and that is a big enough why for me right now. And that's how my practice has evolved, just like Chris's.
Yeah, and the side benefit of that is then, like we said, you get to relate to the students at every level of their practice. Like we've been open for 15 years now, and we have students who have been with us the entire time, even before we open up the studio. And because we continue to practice, I can relate to where they are now at their level of experience and at their level and lifetime of their practice. Yeah. Super valuable. So the real, like, what does winning look like? It looks like, for the beginning, it's teaching and like doing it when you don't feel like doing it, and practicing when you don't feel like practicing because you're connecting to the big why and you're just putting in the time to stay connected to what's most important to you in relationship to your practice and in relationship to your teaching.
I'll add to that. You'll also feel it when one of your students comes up to you and says, I have been going through the toughest time in my life, and coming to your classes has helped me in such tremendous ways I can't even describe it. When your students share those victories in their own lives, those intense experiences they're having, and how coming to your class has helped them in their lives, that's what winning feels and looks like. Yeah. So, you want to do lightning round?
On me?
Do speed round on you?
All right.
Let's finish this episode off and do a speed round on Chris.
If you've listened to a couple of the interviews that we've done, we always end with a speed round, and John just threw this at me. So,
off the cuff, everybody. Off the cuff. Here we go. Speed round. Chris, answer the questions as I read them out to you. So my favorite food is?
It used to be enchiladas, and now it's tempeh tacos.
I like it. The book everyone must read is?
Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's part of our required reading for our teacher trainings.
I feel most alive when?
I'm surfing. Woo! Man. Let me qualify that. When I'm inside of a barrel.
What?
Surfing. Yes. Oh, and it's actually the moment that you get spit out of it. It's like being born again, people. Oh my God.
So good. Money is?
A tool to buy back my time so that I can focus on what's most important in my life.
I like it. My number one passion in life is?
Yoga. Come on, dude.
Freedom means?
Freedom means acknowledging that I have a choice in any given situation to see the situation in a way that lifts me up, or at least gives me insight, or at least very, very minimally doesn't let me fall into this victim mindset.
Sweet. God or source, whichever word you'd like to use. God is?
Everywhere, all the time, and is loving.
And last but not least, when people remember me, they'll say?
He really gave a shit. He really cared. Yeah, that's it.
Amen. That's it for Speed Round. All right, Chris, take us out.
Thank you for listening to Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And as you're reviewing, drop a question, and you can be featured in the next Q&A section of one of our episodes upcoming. So thank you so much. Do the work, honor the struggle, and make the world a better place to live. Peace.
Peace.
Yes. Thanks so much for listening to Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. Do you have a question that you'd like us to answer raw and uncut on the podcast?
If you want your questions answered, all you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 3 simple things.
1, rate and review, telling us what you think of the podcast. 2, in that review, ask anything you want related to yoga. And 3, if you want a shout out, leave your Instagram handle or name. And that's it.
Then listen in to hear your question answered live, raw, and uncut.
Join us next time on Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets Podcast.
Thanks.